This movie is to introduce you to the motion editor in Flash. I believe in Flash 4 they first introduced the motion editor, and it's a very different way of working with animation. So to kind of ease into it, what I'm going to do is create a bounce using some of the prefab easings that they've put into the motion editor, as well as customizing it ourselves. So I'm going to begin by doing a regular tween and have this olive or whatever. Guess what? It's another bouncing. I know. Bouncing, bouncing. So we're going to have this olive go across the stage just on a straight diagonal line. That color is a little difficult to see. Let me change the color so you can see a little better. Okay, so this diagonal motion is all we need to do in terms of tweening on the timeline. Then I'm going to go into the motion editor, and this gets a little difficult to see, so I'm going to actually hide the stage a little bit so you can see. Let's try that again. Alright, so we've got, if I close up the little categories here, in this motion editor, basic motion, we've got transformation, which includes distorting, squashing, stretching, that sort of thing, as well as color effects and filters, and eases. So I'm going to begin by taking a look at these eases. Actually, I'm going to begin by, we're looking at one frame right now. I'm going to open this so that I can see all 70 frames. Let's just kind of take a look here. You'll see that we've got some basic keyframes. These yellow diamonds represent keyframes, and I've got one at the end, which is where we are now, where the playback head is, and one at the very beginning, and none really in the middle. These arrows are how you can transport yourself from one keyframe to the next, and since we only have two, it goes from beginning to end. So if this looks familiar, yes, it looks a lot like After Effects. So we've got these eases that are built in, and this is the list of them. And guess what? I'm going to use the bounce in, and you can see that it presents this sort of scalloped shaped dotted line, which is actually what's going to give us our bounce. And right now it's set to 4, which is how many frames it's going to spread this out over. So by doing this, I've actually made it so that it's going to bounce much quicker. And if I go much lower, we won't get hardly any bounces at all. So, 4, 5, 6 is going to be great for this. All right, so I'm leaving it at 5. I can close this up for the moment, and let's take a look at the basic motion. Now we've got our X and Y, and remember X is moving horizontally across your stage. That's the X-axis, and the Y-axis is moving up and down. That's describing our diagonal. So what we want to do is choose one or the other, X or Y, and apply the up and down motion. So I'm going to apply it on the Y, which is the more normal, I guess you might say, of the two. And let's take a look at what that did on the stage. What it did, you can see the dotted line that shows the motion within each frame. And if I were to play this right now, it does indeed already look like a bouncing olive. Bouncing olive. Even though all we did was make this diagonal tween. The tween is still the diagonal. This is being affected by the motion, pre-built bounce motion that's changing XY coordinates, and the speed and slowing down. As you can see, it moves less up here and more as it's dropping and rebounding. So we've got our basic motion already. It was that easy. We just put the diagonal tween, go to the eases. I chose, let me move this up, it keeps wanting to bounce back. I chose the bounce in effect, ease, right here, and then applied it up here in the on the y-axis only. Notice there's no ease on the x-axis. If we put it on both, just for grins, here's what it would look like. I put it on both. It's going to now bounce out of that corner. So that's kind of interesting, but not exactly a bouncing ball, so I'm going to remove it from the X by saying no ease, and then we get back to our sort of bouncing ball. Okay, I'm going to take this a little bit further in this exercise and add the squash and stretch really based on numbers and not so much on the visual. So I'm going to close up our basic motion, and let's take a look now at our transformation. I'm going to make sure that we're all the way at the beginning by using my little arrows. And in this case I only have one keyframe, that's why I don't have an arrow to go anyplace else, and it's at the beginning. Everything is set to 0 for the skewing, and the scale is set to 100. If you scaled your item on the stage, by the way, it might not say 100%, but I didn't change the size of my symbol from the library. Okay, so I want to be able to see that ease and the swooshing quality of that ease, because we're not going to be able to see the timeline. So I'm going to go along here, and when it hits, right, this is where the swooping goes upward and hits this sort of midpoint line. That is where the olive is actually hitting the ground. So I'm going to set a keyframe there. And what I'm going to do is, as it's hitting, I want to increase the X, which is the width, and decrease the height. You want to, if you're thinking about volume, let's say I increase this to 120%. We need to also, at the same time, reduce this by 20%. Now, I can see right here that I've already made an error, and that is that this is going to gradually go into that deformity from frame 1 to frame, it looks like 31. So it looks fine at that position, but we don't want to see it squashing before it hits the ground. So what I need to do is go to just one frame previous, make a little keyframe, and set these back to 100 so that it does the transformation suddenly. And notice I'm not locking these. I want to be able to control them independently. Alright, so that looks a little better. It's normal. Then when it hits the ground it squashes, and then as it starts to bounce back up, I want it to, a little slower than when it hits, regain its normal. But I do need to set a keyframe. Any change requires a keyframe. Now, I did that numerically. You can also drag these handles. So if I want it to return to completely normal, I can drag it back to that center point, and sure enough, there's my little olive. So following along with our scalloped ease, I know that it's hitting the ground again at that point. I will put a keyframe in again. This time I'll be smart enough to put a keyframe in right before, or so that I know that it's not going to squash and stretch until it hits the ground. So it hits the ground. So maybe I don't want to go 20% this time, maybe only 10%, or again you could pull it. So let's pull it and watch the percentages change. I do like to use the numbers for some things. This is one of those. So 110% here, 90, but let me just say, you find the way that you're comfortable working. And then I'm going to go again another maybe two frames along, set a keyframe, drag it back to normal, and then I believe we have one more little bump. Well, actually two. So it's harder to see this here. We can actually make it larger, but because of the recording I don't have a whole lot of real estate there. I think we can see that. Okay, so it hits the ground there, keyframe there, back it up one keyframe, I keep saying keyframe, back it up one frame, and then I can change the size here. I went with 110 before, let's go with 105. I'm cutting it in half each time, which means that this one would be 95. Remember, it's a volume thing. And then I'm going to go to the next frame. In this case, we can do it very next frame to make it seem like it's got a much quicker recovery. Pull those babies up and down. And last but not least, we have one last little dip there. So I will set the keyframe right where it hits, which is right there. Keyframe before, keyframe, keyframe. Really make it just slight this time, 102 perhaps, 98. And then, oops, Look what I did again. Boy, I love making mistakes. Okay, 102, 98, and of course that means I need to bring that first one back to 100, 100. Drag it, or use the numbers. And there we are with this. 100. And 100. So that is working with the motion editor. Let's see what kind of result we got from that. Pull this back down so we can see. We should get a nice squashy, stretchy ball bounce. There you have it.